This is Expedition Texas, the podcast, presented by Crazy Water. Hello, folks, and welcome to Expedition Texas, the podcast. I'm your host, Bob Malden, and we're here to talk about all the history around Texas that we've explored through the years. Some really cool things that we're going to cover for you today. I'm excited about that, but as always, the show is presented by the best thing to ever come out of the ground in Mineral Wells, Texas, and that is Crazy Water. And, we tour all around Texas exploring lost history. We go into those abandoned buildings, the ghost towns, and we tell you the stories about those places. And today is a very special episode because my guests here on the show today, you probably haven't seen them on the show, but I bet you've seen their work because for the entire duration of Season 7 of Expedition Texas, which we figured it out was about 8 years ago, these guys were the camera crew for that show. And it's not just a thing where these guys are behind the camera just for an episode or two. We took off on the road and we're on the road for 7 straight days shooting that season of the show, sometimes 2 episodes in a day, as many as we could squeeze in there. We had this whole routed thing figured out, and we took off in a 2009 Dodge Charger with everything loaded into the trunk, the back seats pushed down. It was all up in there. Nyc Moy over here was sitting in the back seat, scrunched up like this with equipment on either side, and we took off across Texas. Folks, please welcome my guest for today's episode, Sean Bloch here on my left, and to his left is Nyc Moy. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
All right. Well, we are going to kind of dive into some of the cool stories that we have going back to that time. I want to start off, though, with Sean, because, Sean, you were not just that particular season of the show. You had been working with me some on different projects before that. And can you remember, I remember, how we ended up meeting the first time and you ended up working with us on 31 West Productions?
Yeah, it was Steve was working with Tyler Comic Con, and they were wanting some kind of a commercial made for the event, and they didn't have any money to pay anybody, really, so I had a history of photography, videography. I love doing that kind of stuff, and I'd never done anything like that, but I'd said I could do it, and it actually turned out halfway decent for both commercials, and I guess you saw them and inquired with somebody as to who made them.
With Steve.
Yeah. And he connected the two of us, and we met at Whataburger over on the Loop, and
that's right.
Had a conversation, had on my lunch break, and that was it.
So Steve, being Steve Farmer, who was the local franchisee for a really cool chain that we don't have in East Texas anymore, which was Rocket Fizz. Steve Farmer was tied in with that. I was also tied in with that with our other TV show, Harvey's Festival of Fear, which you actually ended up going on to work with me on. But Expedition Texas has always kind of been the where that's what side our bread is buttered as far as my company goes, and so we've always tried to make sure that we've got everything covered there. And your style and what you did with their commercials, I think, was what kind of drew me to ask Steve, like, who did that? Because, we might need some folks to go out on the road with us occasionally and do this thing, because at that point, up until then, it had been whoever I could get. It's like, can you put this camera on your shoulder and kind of point it this way? And that was it. And so, you were discovered through your work with that, and you and I have worked together on a lot of things since then. Not so much here lately, though, because life takes folks their separate ways, and you were living in the Austin area for quite a while, and there were a few times we were coming through that way. I'm like, hey, you want to come with us and shoot some Expedition Texas? You're like, there's the real job, so couldn't do that. But now you're a little bit closer. You're in the DFW area, right?
Yep. And babe, we got to drive a tank one time.
Yeah, we did. Yes,
yep,
that was amazing.
One of the ones
you weren't with us on that one, were you? No, we got to drive a tank, and Sean's like, I can shoot this. I've got this. And so, we were in a tank. That was on. We went to Bastrop, Texas, I believe it was, and shot. What river was that we were beside? I don't remember. We were at a movie studio, and they had their own tank, I guess, for movie purposes, and we got to drive a tank. We got some great stories that we're going to dive into here as we go along. But first, we need to talk about Nyc Moy and how you and I ended up getting started working together. Totally different path. We actually worked together in the corporate world there, nonprofit corporate world, I guess. Are those the same thing?
Kind of.
Nonprofit.
Kind of,
Anyway, it was corporately run nonprofit, and we were working together for a while, and you had a big interest in photography at that time. Tell me, kind of recount the story of how we ended up in this thing together.
Yeah, absolutely. I had done video and photography on the side, weddings and promo videos and all of that. Worked for a camp for a little bit doing video, and so we met at the blood bank, working kind of side by side there, and there were some projects I got to see you do, which I think one of them kind of fed the idea for doing Expedition Texas.
It did, yeah.
It was a pretty cool video you did, and I saw that and was impressed by that. And then that's around that time was when you came up with the idea for Expedition Texas. Yeah. And I think we talked really early on, like I somehow wanted to be involved and you wanted me to be involved, but didn't know what it would look like until 7 years later.
Yeah, it ended up that the video that I was producing for the blood bank was about this explorer who goes off and he's trying to find a replacement for human blood. That's because we can't get, we're having trouble getting good, consistent blood donors, So my quest in that video was, I was the main character, of course, and my quest was to find the replacement for human blood. And so we go off and we try to find that, and we go on this adventure and misadventures and all this stuff. And so anyway, it was through that, and then we played that for donors, and basically it was to say, there is no substitute for human blood. We only can do this because of you. Thank you for donating. That was the whole message there. But we told it in a fun way. But in that video, I was looking for the replacement for human blood, and I said, we're going to find it. And I didn't even realize that I had said that until my wife at the time pointed out later on after I started Expedition Texas, and the motto is, we're going to find it.
That's right.
And I didn't even realize it. She's like, you said that in that video.
Oh,
and I went back
crazy.
and watched it, and I'm like, yeah, I did. I said, we're going to find it. And so that the seeds were planted there, and in that land around where we shot all that was where I first went hiking with my kids, and we discovered the spillway at Bellwood Lake and the abandoned picnic area, not the one that you can still get to, but there was an abandoned portion of that the old Bellwood Lake Road came to. We covered that with Henry Bell a couple of weeks ago, but it's like there was this place that had just been fenced off and lost to time. The road was dilapidated. You couldn't drive down it anymore, but it went back in the day in the 50s when that was the recreation area in the city of Tyler. You could drive down there and get to this stuff, and that's where you'd have your picnic, your fire pit, your grill, all that stuff was out there, and just trees covering it up, and we found that. But all of that happened while I was working with you.
That's right.
And then it was like, well, they were just finding ways that we could get you involved after that. Sean, do you remember the first time that you went on an expedition with us and we went and shot Expedition Texas?
I was trying to think of that earlier, and
I don't know if this happened before or after we went on the big 7-day trip that we did for season 7 that I want to talk about a lot today with you guys. But there was a trip that you and I made to Lovelady, and it was only one camera on that, and we went and shot at the Eastham Work Farm, which is where Clyde Barrow was. They busted him out of prison to go begin the final spree of Bonnie and Clyde, and then on that same trip in Lovelady, there was this old house. And he's laughing because one of the cool things about this show is, the show's about places. It's about the old buildings and the old houses and the old towns, but we sure do meet some characters on this show. And this old house was basically the exact way it had been left. I don't think they even cleaned it since then. Whenever it was abandoned in the 60s, 70s, I don't know. But the guy that was there that preserved it all, what a character.
Yeah, that guy was definitely
Do you remember his name? That season doesn't even come up in reruns anymore, so I know that it had to be before 7.
Yeah, I believe
so.
That
it was like 5 or 6.
Yeah, that probably would have been before everything.
Yeah, so those don't even make it into reruns anymore.
I don't even think you have that footage anymore.
It's a lost episode. I have no idea where it is.
Because you're going to save it for a Halloween episode.
Yeah, it was great, but it was this old house. They told the whole story of it. Out behind it was a collapsed, and I mean literally folded in upon itself, church. And Sean and the gentleman that was our guide found a snake. He reacted in a very fun way. Sean reacted by like putting the camera on a pole and holding it down there so that we could get shots of the snake. We had to bleep the guy because he was
colorful,
typical snake response. And so, but that was kind of, I think that was really your introduction to Expedition Texas, and I remember too about that trip. That was also my introduction to the way Sean shoots video, or did.
I know where you're going with this. And I think it had to have been after. It had to have been further because that was the trip you decided to teach me the lesson of stop the camera from rolling because then you made me edit that episode.
I did make you edit that because there must have been one before that because the typical thing for Sean was turn the camera on, it rolls the entire time we're there. And it's like he would find something interesting, point at it, 5 seconds, cool, let's move on. And then but then a lot of it was just us walking around with Sean on the camera. And I'm sitting there watching that and trying to edit that episode, and I'm like, I'm not watching this all day. So that's when I called you and said, Sean, I think I got a job for you. And I want to show you why we stopped the camera between shots. But yeah, that was, and after that, yes, it was a lot less of that. But yeah, that was one of the earlier ones. So I guess you did shoot some in there before that. You also worked on another show that we were producing just locally at the time called Harvey's Festival of Fear, which has always been and is still on the air on Retro TV and the Family Channel for us. And you did that originally in a room that was about maybe a third this size. I don't know how we did that, but we did. And not too long ago, that's what we were doing in this very room. But we had a chance to work together in different ways in that time. That was kind of the early going of Expedition Texas. And whenever I parted ways with the blood bank, it was this full time after that.
Yeah.
And it meant that we could go and travel for longer periods, and it wasn't just a weekend warrior kind of thing. And so as season 7 approached, it was the summer going into it, I believe, is when we did this. And Sean actually has the pictures to prove it. I don't know if you saw like the dates that you posted those. We want to get into those here in a little bit. But he pulled down some pictures from his Facebook that he had to scroll way back and find those. But we're going to get into what it took to shoot season 7 here in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Crazy Water, and the Crazy Water Festival, which is coming up starting October 10th in Mineral Wells, Texas. The Crazy Water Festival is a lively annual event that celebrates the town's rich history and unique mineral water heritage. Mineral Wells boomed in the 1800s for its therapeutic mineral water, attracting visitors seeking its healing properties. The Crazy Water Festival started, though, in 1980 to honor the crazy legacy that has grown into festivities including concerts, ongoing live music, a 5K run, street art, car show, arts and craft vendors, food trucks, and family-friendly activities. The Crazy Water Festival is not only a celebration of the town's crazy past, but also a beacon of community support and collaboration. More can be found if you head on over to crazywater.com, and we'll have all that posted, of course, at expeditiontexas.tv. We'll be back with Nick and Sean here talking Season 7 of Expedition Texas right after we hear from the East Texas Oil Museum.
Do you love history? Do you ever wonder about the way things were almost 100 years ago in East Texas? Visit the Kilgore College East Texas Oil Museum to learn about the men and women who lived during the East Texas oil boom of the 1930s. Step back in time and visit Boomtown, USA, the life-size diorama of a town booming in oil. Step inside the general store and visit the shopkeeper. Head to the theater to watch the Great Oil Boom movie. And no visit would be complete without taking a quick journey on the elevator ride to the center of the earth to learn about all of the geology of the East Texas oil field. The East Texas Oil Museum is now open Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. with last entry at 4 p.m. For more information, visit kilgore.edu/oil museum or find us on all the socials.
All right, and we're back here on Expedition Texas, the podcast. I want to remind you to head over and pick up the book, Expedition Texas, Tales from the Road, some of the stories we tell here on the podcast and more wherever you get your books. And we have some autographed copies available still over at expeditiontexas.tv. But I want to get back to my guests here, Nick and Sean, because one day we decided to load everything up in the back of that 2009 Dodge Charger, which was not the best vehicle to be doing this in, and took off on this trip that you and I, we all had kind of a chance to really bond during that trip. And I thought that was a really cool thing because, you guys come from very different backgrounds. I come from different backgrounds than you guys do, but we all have kind of this thing in common that we love to capture these images on video, and we all sort of turned into storytellers for real on that trip. And I want to start off with the story, and we kind of were texting about this ahead of time. Eastland, Texas, and the Santa Claus bank robber. Now, this happened in Cisco, but came to a head in Eastland, which is where we went. And Sean, you remember the jail we went into, and some of the details about that jail. There's a big shootout, and remnants of that shootout still in the jail.
In the ceiling.
Yeah. And so what are your memories of that trip that was starting off in Eastland and some of the things that happened to us along the way there?
Well, I still love Eastland. I've been telling my wife I need to take her back there for a long time because every time we went to that town, it was just great. It's just an awesome atmosphere. But the jail it's still intact. It looks exactly like it used to look. It's very old and dilapidated, rusty. And the story was just amazing. I mean, a bunch of guy dressed up as Santa Claus, robbing banks, getting chased by a mob of people, like the last mob lynching in Texas.
Yeah.
It was an incredible story, and that was definitely one of the funnest trips.
The sheriff, I love the way the sheriff told about the Santa Claus bank robber once they actually got him captured and in the jail. They said he just acted crazy. He just sort of withdrew within himself and acted like he needed psychiatric treatment. So they went to administer that and left the door open to his cell because they thought he had withdrawn inside himself. And then all of a sudden he's not. He's just playing. He gets up, gets the gun, shoots the deputy. He killed the deputy. And that's actually what led the mob to want to come and bring him out. And they demanded the prisoner, drug him out, and at a nearby telephone pole, which the sheriff showed us, is where they strung him up, and that was it.
We saw the rope, too. They still have the rope.
Yep.
They hang on to the good souvenirs out there in Eastland. And we've been back several times since then. When I was performing music, I went back and did the Horny Toad Festival. Of course, the toad there is a big story, too, in Eastland. And you were excited about that aspect of it because the horned frog, the horned lizard, Texas horned lizard, that lived in the cornerstone of the courthouse, Nick.
Right. It's a celebrity in the town.
Yeah.
And so everybody knew you have to pay homage to the horned lizard.
Yeah, and you have to go by and see him when you're there. And the story on him is, I believe the courthouse was built, the cornerstone was set in was it 7 or 10 years later? Some significant amount of time later, they decided to pull out the time capsule they had put in the cornerstone of the building, and they pull out the Texas horny toad that's still in there, and the little guy starts to move, and he's still alive. And so they took him around to fairs and festivals, aha! And then he eventually died of natural causes. But I guess being sealed up in a building for a while, I was well, I've got nothing else to do. I'll just sleep for 7 years.
Right. He was hibernating in there.
And PETA would approve of that nowadays.
And so eventually there was they kept the little body, and he's on display there, but he's missing a leg. And reportedly, that has to do with, was it Lyndon Johnson? Somebody.
It was somebody, yeah.
It might have been a governor who came down and was celebrating the annual, Old Rip is what he's called, festival, and was holding him up by the little leg, and it broke off. So it's not there anymore. There's one leg missing, but it was removed, not intentionally, by a famous person. So. A celebrity in
That
Texas.
makes it okay.
Yeah, I guess that makes it all right.
Yeah.
I mean, he was dead. He didn't feel it. But so Cisco, Texas, where we actually this season kicked off with a trip to Cisco. And at the time, on that very trip, I was trying to get the city of Cisco at the time to let us explore what was known as the largest man-made pool. Mm-hmm. And they would not do it. The city manager at the time would not let us. it was like, sorry, we don't need the publicity. And I'm like, it's a story. It's part of your city, you know. And then there was also reportedly at the time an old zoo that had been abandoned since the 30s that was somewhere in the area that we wanted to see. Wouldn't tell us where that was. We had better luck this year. This past summer, the city has embraced their past and has decided to let folks see that, and they actually have made a nature trail through where the old zoo was.
Oh, wow.
That you can visit now. So we went to Cisco and saw that, and then we also went to the world's largest man-made pool and had a guided tour, and it was very, very nice. And we finally got to see it now. In 2016, there was a massive flood. The dam breached, and there was a massive flood that took out the highway. That might have been. It wasn't 2016 that we tried to go, was it?
Yep.
It was? Mm-hmm. That may be why they didn't want us to go there.
Might have been
That could be
underwater,
it.
Bob.
That could be it. That could be part of it. But and I didn't pay attention to the news that far out, and maybe that's why I just didn't know. Sorry.
We were just like, oh, you can see where the lynching happened, but you can't see the pool.
Isn't it part of the lake? Can't we see? Why not? It's because it was underwater. So we figured it out. That's why we couldn't go. So anyway, we started off though in Eastland, and I've been back to Eastland a couple of times. I don't know if you guys remember this. There was a steakhouse.
Oh, I remember it.
You do?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It was the first time I got to eat at a steakhouse free.
And back then, Chris Moore, who was kind of booking all of our shoots and stuff, he would also set up a place for us to eat.
Right.
Which is a real nice perk. I mean, the show's not about food at all. I mean, but we would, if somebody was going to feed us, we'd bring the camera in and say, hey, this is what we had for dinner, you know? And we did that, and it was in that episode of the show. And the last couple of times I've been back there, there's a banner on the front of the place that says, as seen on Expedition Texas.
Oh, wow.
And I'm
awesome.
like, wow. We got a steak out of the deal.
Yep.
And people
Very good
see
steak.
Expedition Texas. Yeah, it was a great steak.
Delicious.
And we get to see, the people get to see it. And it's a faded banner at this point. So it's been there for a long time, which kind of makes me feel a little bit old because it's been that long that we've been doing this thing that this old banner that's now hanging off the front of the building, is fading and kind of breaking into the wind. And it talks about they've been seen on Expedition Texas, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, we ate there more than once, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I think every chance we got.
Yep.
And I've been back every chance I got. There's new ownership, I think, and so they don't have like the meat market part of it anymore.
Okay.
But that was part of what made it so cool.
Yeah,
right.
Is you
Don't see
could
that
pick
as a lot
your steak
anymore.
and say, I want that one, and I want it made this way. And so that was pretty cool. So then we continued on. I know that now I'm wondering if I'm getting these confused. Nick, did you go to Amarillo to the Herring Hotel with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that is the so the Herring Hotel in Amarillo was there's a cross reference to another story here when we interviewed Bill Mack. That was you that went with me on that one, right?
Yep, I got
that
to
was
hold an Emmy.
earlier. Yes, that was a Grammy.
Grammy, yeah, Grammy.
An earlier episode where we went and saw Bill Mack and talked about his radio career. We got to hold the Grammy that he won for writing the song "Blue" for Leanne Rimes. Wow. Pretty cool deal there, Nick. And then we went and toured the radio station where he got his start in Shamrock, Texas. But Bill Mack told a story when he's working at his very first radio job in Amarillo, Texas. Hank Williams was performing at the fair, and so he was in town. Hank Williams was his idol. He's like, I'm going to see if Hank Williams wants to do my radio show. So he calls the Herring Hotel, which is where Hank was staying, and he says, I need to speak to Hank Williams. This is Bill Mack at yada yada radio station. And they're like, oh, sir, he left specific instructions not to be disturbed. And so he's like, oh no, he'll want to talk to me. He'll want to be on my show. I'm promoting his show coming up here. He'll want to do this. Okay. And so she puts him through to the room, and the steel guitar player Don answers the phone, and he says, "This is Bill Mack calling for Hank Williams." He's like, "Oh no, he's asleep." Like, he'll want to talk to me. It's my morning radio show. We're promoting a show. I'm Bill Mack. And he's like, okay. So he puts him on the phone and proceeds to get cussed out because the guy, Hank Williams, asked him, what time is it? It's like 5 a.m. He's like, what? That was it. It didn't happen, but that he did get to talk to him at least. But yeah, that call took place at the Herring Hotel. So it's nice whenever some of these stories kind of overlap in time. And so the Herring Hotel, you guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
Remember, it was windy.
It was windy, yeah. Amarillo is pretty flat. There was a lot, though. We did a lot on that same trip while we were in Amarillo. But Nick, do you remember much about the Herring Hotel going up into that?
Not a ton. I really don't. Yeah.
That one, the hotels kind of tend to run together for me.
That's exactly what I was just about to say.
But you have pictures of us inside the hotel, taking some images in the room. But I wanna try to bring your memory back, because you're the one that said this and got me to really thinking about the places we go into sometimes and being more cautious about it. Remember the basement? I think it might have been the sub-basement. It was below the Herring Hotel. There were these huge doors where they would store cold storage food. Yeah. And then the massive boilers that were down there. Oh, yeah. And we're all like, man, we need to get a picture in front of these doors. And so we do, and the flash was on. I think it was Chris's camera. Chris might have been with us on that. The flash was on, and whenever we looked at the picture that resulted from it, it was pretty dark down there, but the flash was on so we could get a good shot. And then you look at the picture, and it looks like it's snowing on us. You remember that, what you said?
I think that was the one I brought up, Freddy Krueger, because that was definitely the vibes I was getting from that area.
And then you said, "Oh, look, pure asbestos."
Oh yeah. There were a lot of pure asbestos moments on Expedition Texas. Yeah.
I'm coughing just thinking about it. But so we're down there in this thing, and it's dark, so we're just going along doing whatever. But then you take the picture, and it looks like it's snowing all around us in the picture because the flash is bouncing off of whatever is in the air. And it's significant stuff, and I haven't been able to shake that image since then. And you were just like, and Sean tends to be kind of the this just say whatever he's thinking kind of guy.
No, what are you?
And he goes, "Oh, look, pure asbestos," and I'm like, "Oh, I hope not." But we have some really fun stories from that trip. We also went that trip, I believe it was, because Chris did join up with us.
Yeah, he was there
for that part of it, and we went to the Big Texan.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was no way you were going to finish that steak.
So the challenge at the Big Texan in Amarillo, the original was located on Route 66, but now it's out on the interstate there. And if you go there and you want to take the challenge, now I love a good steak, but I want a good, reasonable sized steak. But for the show, Chris got us into a lot of things when he was producing the show. And Chris suggested we should do that for the show. You should try to eat the steak for the show. And I said, I can barely finish when I get a regular size, like a 12-ounce steak. I know I'm not going to be able to eat a 72-ounce steak. And so, but everybody was game and ready to go. And he's like, well, they already think that you're going to do it. And so we came, you guys shot it. And I get maybe this far into that steak, and I'm already feeling it. And so anyway, we decide to do this bit at the end of it where I'm eating, and then like the camera turns away, and then you come back and the steak's gone, and it was in my lap, and I mean it felt like I was picking up a brisket. I mean it was huge. Yeah. And then we did it, and the guy comes up and he's like, "Oh no, not fair. It's hidden down there.
Can't cheat the meat."
Yeah, can't cheat the meat. Yes, that's what he said. But that's also the trip that we did that, and then we went out and we took some spray paint cans like everybody does, and went out and painted at the Cadillac Ranch. You guys remember that?
Yeah, I don't think I was on that one.
I don't think that was ours. That wasn't that one.
That wasn't the same trip?
No, because I still haven't been to Cadillac Ranch.
Ah, okay.
Now I feel cheated.
Well, we drove right by it when we were out there. We should have stopped. But every time that I've been there with somebody new, I would usually stop there. But I probably was in one of those modes where I'm like, okay, we got to get to the next thing. I know I took my kids out there because I took them early, in probably third or fourth season. We went out to Glen Rio, and I couldn't get any of you knuckleheads to go out there with me, so I had to get the kids. And it's like, no, I think I'm busy for those 3 days it's going to take to drive out there. But we went out to the New Mexico border where Glen Rio is like the last town in Texas, and yeah, that was them. I think it was.
I remember hearing about that trip, and I was kind of relieved I didn't go.
It was a long ways, and there was no guide. So, and it was, you want to talk about wind?
Oh yeah, I bet
it was nonstop wind, and I'm sitting there. My son was like, my oldest son was 13 at the time, and I'm like, hold the camera steady. He's like, I can't. It's like, and then we pulled into Glen Rio, and there's like this little section of Route 66 that goes down through where the town was and what's left of the town. And I mean, right as we're pulling in, a tumbleweed, boom, 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 goes across the road. And I'm like, that's perfect. We need that. We need video of that. So my youngest son was with us, and he didn't really have a job because he was pretty young at the time. And so I'm like, Ryan, go get that tumbleweed. Run that tumbleweed back over there, and then let it go, and we're going to video the tumbleweed going across the road. Well, he lets it go, and it comes right at the camera. Okay, no, come get the tumbleweed. So he comes and gets the tumbleweed, runs back over there, lets it go. It doesn't go anywhere. Okay, wait, let's do it again. Run, get the tumbleweed, and then he lets it go, and it goes like the other way. And so we, after 3 or 4 times of him running all over this little town with this one tumbleweed, it's already fallen apart at this point. He finally gets the shot that we used in the show, which is the tumbleweed going across Route 66 there. But we had to fake that one a little bit because it looked too cool when we pulled in. It's like,
of course,
how can we recreate that? We have to do that.
Can I have a tumbleweed in a show about Texas?
There were a lot of great shots, though, of Ryan running to retrieve the tumbleweed that I still have somewhere in there. But let's see, where did we go after that?
We did some Buddy Holly while we were there.
Oh, yeah,
so we went on to
Holly.
Lubbock. That was the Lubbock trip then. So we went to Lubbock and went to the Buddy Holly Museum and the home where they first started like rehearsing the crickets and getting them all together.
Yep.
You remember much about that one, Sean?
It was like all kind of touristy stuff, so it wasn't as exciting.
It wasn't as
especially
cool
compared to like Duel that we went to.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to Duel. But yeah, Buddy Holly. The coolest thing about that to me is we got to go back to the dressing rooms at the big. What was it? It was a big like stadium type of thing at the fairgrounds.
Oh yeah, yes.
Where not just Buddy Holly, but also Elvis and so many others had dressed and prepared for their shows in that big stadium, which was basically just concrete benches kind of molded into the wall,
Yeah.
But yeah, the fairgrounds in Lubbock, that was a really cool. I forgot that we went there on that one. I mean, we were really booked up that week. We just went all over the place.
Yeah, it was leave one place, head to the other, not get to the hotel till late at night, sleep a little, get up, start all over again.
Yeah.
I think we even stopped in like a random town that we weren't even exploring for hotels. Like it was like, well, we need to get from here to here, so let's just stay here.
Yeah, and sometimes the drive would be a little bit too much to be able to get all the way to where we were going. So we'd kind of find us a little layover town and stay there.
San Angelo, I think we did that.
That
San
was
Angelo.
the hotel that you booked on the way, sight unseen. That that didn't go well.
So I'm not going to tell you what I use, but I've used this for a while, and I've learned how to navigate it a little bit better now. Plus, they've become a little more transparent now too. But there used to be an app that you could use that would let you book rooms sight unseen, which I did a lot, and you could kind of go by the rating of the hotel. They didn't include reviews back then. You just were kind of on your own. And it was like, back then I was like taking whatever the best deal was. And sweet.
It worked most of the time, to your credit.
And most of the time it was good. A couple times Chris even hooked us up with good rooms. Like in Amarillo and Eastland, we had decent rooms that were comped to us for going there. Yep. So, yeah, both of those cities really stepped up for us and helped us out with really nice accommodations while we were there. The old hotel in Eastland was like historic property. Was really cool.
Yeah,
it was
awesome.
Amazing. It felt like we were staying at Grandma's house only, but we were in like a really cool hotel.
Yeah, there's an old sewing machine in my room, the foot-operated one.
Wow.
And they had Pop-Tarts in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah. Can't beat that. And then in Amarillo, the folks at Beth Duke in Amarillo put us in a really nice hotel there that Sean completely wasted because he went out. And then it was a great room. Sean left it completely empty, bed totally made. And then I'll leave that story there. And then we went on though to San Angelo, I guess, after that, and that's where the good old app failed us a little bit. And I guess I've blocked that from my memory. I guess I don't remember much about the room.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say yours was because I don't think we stayed there. I legitimately think we got a different hotel because it was so bad. Or did we stay there? And maybe they had to move Bob to
Yeah, well, I know we had to move rooms. Like
Okay.
the room that we went to first, like there was something, like it was dirty.
Growing.
Yeah, and I think it was a smoking room.
Yeah.
And it smelled really heavily. Maybe like animals too or something.
Yeah.
There's a squirrel in the ceiling.
Maybe I'm glad I don't remember that.
Yeah,
Because I've had some fails with rooms. Nick can tell you the last time when we did the Texas Country Music Awards, he texted me and he's like, and I've gotten to where it's kind of like, okay, well, I'll just sleep and not think about it. And but you know, when you got other people working with you, Nick texted me because his wife was also traveling and she was in the DFW area, which is where we were. And he said, would you be offended if I went and stayed in my wife's hotel tonight with her?
It was nice.
And I'm like, how far is that? And he's like, oh, it's only about an hour or so. I'm like, okay.
Just be here on time tomorrow.
Yeah, just be at the thing. And he was. And yeah, but
I slept really well that night.
Yeah, we didn't.
The next night was different.
There were just times that it didn't work out so well for me to use the app, and I guess that was one of them. But it was from San Angelo that we went on to Dual, right?
Yep.
And to me, and I think it's the experience of, it was one of the only times, other than Glen Rio, which was really kind of a fail episode, but it was one of the only times that we, because with a ghost town, there's not someone you can call at the local chamber of commerce or the library and say, can you show us around? And every time we've tried to shoot in a ghost town, there's no one to be a guide.
Right.
And I had, still the bad taste in my mouth from trying in Glen Rio, and the only house there had signs posted, no trespassing, we will shoot, keep out, dog will bite, that kind of stuff. All, like every other post on the fence was like, don't mess with us. And so we just explored it without a guide and without permission, which we normally don't do. But anyway, the deal with Dual was there were houses that looked like they had inhabitants, and so we started knocking on doors. And it was one of the only times on this show that everything played out exactly how it happened.
And it was perfect.
Yeah, it just
It seemed scripted, but it wasn't.
It was literally, all right, I'm going to walk up to this guy's house, get the camera out, don't act like you're filming, let's just see where it goes. And that was the direction that we had. You
were, I think, in the front seat that time, and you were, I was telling you, just kind of film, but do it kind of on the sly. If we get permission, that's cool. We'll go ahead and, I don't recommend this, don't do this, don't try this at home. And we don't do this anymore. But it was like, just get what we can, and then if it fails, we're not going to use it. But it didn't.
Right.
It was perfect. I mean, that guy just talked.
And I don't remember, were there 2 or 3 houses right there?
So we went to one house, which was near the old abandoned baseball stadium, which was the big feature that we had heard about, and was the reason that the thing I'd seen pictures of that I wanted to go and see. So there was a house near that, nobody home. Right. Sean got footage of me going up and knocking on the door, and then we went down and we went to the post office, which there was a post office there.
There was a post office.
But it was run on a volunteer basis.
It was the size of a postage stamp.
Yes. And it was a very small place. I had caught somebody there one time on the phone, and they were supposed to call me back, and they never did in time for us to go on the trip. And so, and it was, I think it was literally like people just kind of came in and did what they needed to do, and then they went, and maybe one truck would come through and drop off the mail. I don't know how it worked because nobody ran it. But we went in to that. There was no one there. All the, they had all the old boxes and everything though for the PO boxes.
Cool looking, yeah.
Yeah, but very small. And then right behind it was where the dude's house was that we ended up going to talk to. And I should remember his name.
I know,
but it has slipped my mind now. He's been in the intro of the show forever because
you're on the back of his truck in the intro. Of the show.
Yes, for the longest time up until this season.
Oh, okay.
That had been in the truck when Barry Corbin says "hitch a ride," and that was the image, is me on the back of this dude's truck because at first, he really didn't want to take us around, but he ended up taking us around.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing he said was, "Well, I'm not the person you want to talk to, but I'll take you to meet the guy. I don't really like being on camera or talking too much."
Yeah, and then he calls the guy, and the guy's not home. He's like, well, he's not going to be back. He went to the feed store. He's not going to be back for a while. And that was Briggs Brandon.
Briggs. That was the name I was trying to think of earlier.
And Briggs was the kind of the resident old timer, and he was the one. I want to say the guy that we ended up riding around with was Paul something. But I want to point out for those who are taking in the podcast on video, which you can do on our YouTube channel, over Nick's left shoulder there is a little memento from Duel, the ghost town. They came out of the church. It came with, of course, his blessing. We don't ever take things unless somebody says we can have it or they give it to us. But we met up with him, and of course, he's telling us, no, I don't want to do this. He was chatting with a neighbor over the fence, remember, and the neighbor's finally like, I'm out of here, and left. And then he tells us, well, you can go explore that old blacksmith shop over there. And we just kind of went in and did that, didn't really know what we were looking at. And so we came back and started asking him questions. And he started answering the questions, like, is it okay the camera's rolling? Yeah. And he like eventually became one of the best guides we've ever had on the show.
He absolutely was one of the best guides we ever had.
And he
probably because it was so natural. He was just talking about the place he lived and what went on there, and it worked.
He took knew time, all the history and
and he took time to get to know you guys,
right.
Which helped because then you've got these cameras on you all the time, and you're carrying around pointing at him. But you're Nick and Sean at that point. You're not the camera crew,
right?
And he showed us everything we wanted to see. The old stadium, and he did this whole play ball sequence with us out on the old baseball stadium.
Yep.
He took us into the community center and showed us photo albums of him and all the people back down through decades and decades in that town when it was a much bigger, booming town. And then probably my favorite thing in that, obviously we went in the old church.
Right.
He's walking through. He's like, he's telling us about the church and where, this is where they all went to church. He's kind of, jiggling things as we go along, kind of punching on the wood and stuff. And he's like, this is a lot of good wood in this thing. I'm probably going to tear this down next week and use it for lumber. And I'm looking at him like, no, please don't.
This is one of the last ghost towns in Texas.
It's this beautiful little country church. And I'm probably going to tear this down next week and use it for lumber. But that's how we ended up getting there. I'm like, before you do, can we take a souvenir? And so that's how we ended up with the attendance sign from the church there. And we tried to do our best to recreate what it would have looked like in the building for display on the set. But then he took us down and we met Briggs. And I recently saw that Briggs has passed away. We lost him, but something about sitting down with somebody who's lived in a place their entire life, and it's now a ghost town, but them talking about when it was hopping. He met his wife there.
Talking about high school and all the high school events and the games. And
it was awesome to listen to him talk about that.
He met his, and it's like his whole life was in that place. And there's like, and we go into these places all the time on Expedition Texas, and we see places where that once had so much life, but not someone whose life was so much connected to that. It might have been their workplace. It might have been a place they visited. It might have been their high school or whatever. But this town was connected to him.
Right.
Every building in that town had some sort of connection to this guy. And I remember when we were there, I don't know which one of you was on camera, I said, zoom in on his face. Because
that was me.
Yeah.
And he got real deep.
He got real deep and he got very emotional. And we just captured this moment with Briggs that I'm so happy that we have that to go with that story with him. And because it's not always about digging around through old stuff and finding things with this show. Sometimes it's about the characters and how they're connected to that place.
Well, it was almost like he was what we were exploring. That was the cool thing. He was the living history sitting right there in front of us talking about all of that. And that just made that one of the coolest places we've ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't was that the last stop on that trip? Did we go anywhere?
No, we went to Waco after that.
We did. What did we do in Waco?
We didn't actually get to do anything. We tried to do some stuff.
Oh,
we got to do later.
Wasn't there a school on that one? And that's where the
that was Abilene.
Was that Abilene?
Yes, Abilene.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we went through the Lincoln High School in Abilene.
And you just had me go explore the creepy old building all by myself.
Yeah.
I was doing B-roll and found that
Right.
door that said, "Watch out, he lives here." Peekaboo. And so I think that actually made the show because I set up the camera and read it off and opened it up.
Yes. Yeah, we did go when we were going through that area. We went to Abilene because I think Abilene down through San Angelo, down to Dual, something like that. But yeah, Abilene at that Lincoln High School was, we did a lot on that trip.
We did.
I mean, the last time that we took off and went on a significant road trip, I had Jason Garrett, not the former coach of the Cowboys, but Jason Garrett, the photographer here in East Texas, and Matt Reagan with me, and they're going to be guests together on the show at some point too. We didn't make 7 days, that's for sure, and we certainly didn't see near as much as you guys did. In fact, they did the 10th anniversary season with me, and we went and visited a lot of places that we had gone in previous episodes of the show. A lot of places we had visited in the first season of the show, we went back and visited 10 years later. Is it still there, kind of thing. But yeah, so that and just the miles and the memories and and then Sean's like, how fast will the car go, because we were on a straight highway, and he's like, let's see what it'll do. I mean, little things like that we kind of do, and we kind of build these memories on this trip. It's the stuff that people don't really get to see when it finally makes it on TV.
Right. One thing about Dual that we didn't talk about was the old abandoned house that was like neighbors that he was talking about. I thought they'd come back at some point, and we were walking through this old house, and like they still had glassware and things were all set up, and then there was that really cool puzzle.
Yes,
and we got
remember
some
the
amazing
puzzle.
footage of that.
That was either a World War II or World War I.
It was in Africa. That's what I thought was cool about it.
Yeah, okay.
It's like, that was popular at that time. There were puzzles, talking about the war in Africa, and nobody really remembers that there even was a war in Africa during World War II.
The imagery on it was so different from anything you'd see, even up through the 50s. I mean, it was very different imagery on that puzzle, and they had completed it and framed it.
Yeah, there was one piece missing, and I think you reached down and picked it up off the ground and put it back
Popped it in there.
That was
and
awesome.
The image of him finding that, and seeing that and looking at it was in the intro of the show for a long time too, because it's just one of those things. You find these things when you go there, and there are places we've been on the show where it looks like one day everybody just kind of got up from work and left and never came back, or they went to the store in this case and never came back. And you said he was saying, I thought they would come back. Well, that's what's weird about it, is like sometimes they just don't.
Right.
And they went off and worked somewhere else or went on a trip or whatever. I don't know what their actual story was, but they didn't come back. Right. And it just stayed there, and it stayed in that state for that long. And that's what Expedition Texas is. And when I mentioned that I was starting a podcast, Sean, I actually had posted something. I think you said something about, okay, so when am I going to be a guest on the podcast?
Something like that.
So I figure there's probably something you wanted to get in here on these microphones and tell us. And so take it away. This is your opportunity.
I mean, there's just so much. It was such a great experience. I mean, because you just basically gave somebody that you saw a 30-second commercial that they made a chance to go out and do all these great things and go to these cool places. And I got to tell people, hey, I'm working on a TV show. I mean, it's not the biggest TV show ever, but it was awesome. And I enjoyed all of that. But what I always tried to get across to Bob was, yes, these are awesome places that we're going to, but you make the show. Your personality, your jokes, your little, remarks, how you frame the story, how you tell the story. That's what people are tuning in week after week after week. And you had a hard time seeing that it was more about your person, not more about, I mean, of course, obviously it's history and all that, but you made it fun. You made it fun to watch, the stories, the way you told them and the way you talked to people and got information out of them. And you can, your radio, you can take someone that has no interest in wanting to talk about whatever they're supposed to be talking about, and within 5 minutes, it's like y'all are old buddies sitting around a fire after a couple of beers, and they're just talking about everything in their life and everything that had happened at the place we were at. And that was, I mean, it was, it was fun working with you and getting to see all that in addition to seeing all the cool places that we went. I mean, and then just the random side quests that we would end up on.
Side quests, I love that.
Even through Duel, Bob just like, hey, that's cool. Let's go pull over on the side of the road and go explore through the desert for an hour or so. And it's like, all right, I'll grab the camera. We might see something.
Yeah.
And we found a bunch of that. A lot of the places we went, and Duel was a great example of it. It's like if a house in Tyler gets abandoned within a month, all the windows are busted out, everybody's gone in, stolen everything out of the house that's worth anything, all the copper is definitely gone. And it's just, when we went to Duel, it was like, this is almost like a sealed place. Like you would think that it was being guarded 24/7, but it was just so out in the middle of nowhere. There was no one to go through and vandalize anything.
A time capsule.
Yeah, it was like a time capsule. Like there was still a puzzle on the wall. There was still appliances in this house. There there was a toilet. It was obviously run down and dilapidated, but it looked like it had been preserved, and it really hadn't been. That was the cool thing about that. A lot of the places that we went were like that. You just think that, wow, no one's come in here and destroyed this place, and it kind of gives you a little bit of hope for the world that that stuff can still be there.
It's not everywhere that's happening, and I've never really thought that the show was about me, but it took, and I was able to share my love for the things that we're doing. And at first, it's really weird how my attitude about what we do has evolved over the years. It started off that it was about, let's check out these cool abandoned places. It never was about ghost stories or anything like that, but let's go in and tell these really cool stories and look around. But one of the things I learned doing the show is, as you look around, you're like, well, this is where I came with my date in high school for the senior prom, and over here is where I asked her to marry me. And little things like that, these little stories that pop up that are connected to these places. And so over the years, one of the things I really like to say, especially when I'm doing like these little presentations at Rotary clubs and things like that, is we all drive by these places and we think, boy, if those walls could talk. Right. And with our show, they do. And all we're doing as a crew on this show is just trying to help those walls talk and tell those stories, because some of the places that we've been, they aren't there anymore. Some of the places are very close to not being there anymore because nature's taking them back. But then there's some places that we've been that have made a full comeback. And a great example of that was the Statler Dallas, which was the hotel where Tina Turner left Ike for the very last time and went down the road to the Ritz. And that hotel was abandoned when we explored it in season 5. And 2 years ago, my wife and I stayed in a very nice room, and they did a very nice restaurant in that very hotel. And it didn't look like the same place. It's amazing what they did to it. But Nick, I kind of want to get your perspective on the show and kind of your time working with it. I know that off and on through the last several years, whenever you can, you've broke away and come and been with us. What are your thoughts on the show?
Yeah, I love it. So one of my, our business principles is help me feel important. Our goal is to make people feel important, and that's something that you do really well, because everyone does have a story. I think Chick-fil-A uses that in their training. There's everyone's, I don't know everyone's story or something like that. But the idea of going out and pulling out those stories from people is super cool. It's very novel. And when you do that, and you like in Duel, we made somebody feel really special because we cared to know about his life. And the man was, he was around maybe 6 people a year at that point, living out there. And but for us to go sit down and want to tell his story and listen to his story, I guarantee carried him through his last years. Yeah. Having somebody that interested in him. And so getting to see these places and tell their story and keep their memory alive, keep their legacy going is a really cool thing. It's really honorable. And I think the opportunities that we've had to try to help somebody restore a theater, or to go to a hotel that needed to be restored, which was something we left off on this in Mineola. Yep. That was our first stop.
Right. The first stop on that trip was the Breckenridge?
Beckham.
Beckham.
Yeah,
It was Beckham. Beckham Hotel in Mineola. Yeah. And the guy that shot himself inside the phone booth.
Yeah.
That happened
Yep.
there. Yeah. And there were still like dings in the wall and in parts of the phone booth from that. I mean, like little stuff like that. And so that place actually operates currently as a boutique hotel.
Right.
And you can stay there.
Absolutely.
And what a cool thing. I mean, that 7 or 8 years ago, you were looking at this place that probably you would think wasn't coming back.
Right.
And it is, and you can stay there. You and I went on a separate trip to Corpus Christi to the Ritz Theater.
Yep.
What an adventure that was. That place, first of all, going to Corpus Christi, we hadn't been there before, but then going into not just the backstage, but under the stage and
Literally
through places that had been built over
all
through
the crawl
several
space.
remodels. Yeah. And going into and we went there. We took our stuff is small enough. We can go wherever we want to go in these places. And I'm not small enough to go wherever I want to go anymore. Used to be, but that was one of Sean's favorite things is whenever I'd say, okay, we're going in there. And we'd just go.
Right.
We'd figure out a way. We'd squeeze through whatever. You said that was like a crawl space or something.
Well, that's not. It was the actual hotel we were staying at, and it was backed up to another building.
Oh, that's right.
And there was a space in between it, and Bob
Yes.
just like opens the window. He's like, "What's in here?" And just like walks out, and then we got the camera out there. And
when you were mentioning that in the text messages, I didn't know what you were talking about. But yeah, there was at the hotel we stayed. Was that Eastland?
no, it wasn't
was it-
Eastland because
Where was that? But yeah, it was like
that trip.
oh well.
the buildings were together, and the window opened, and you could get out into the space between the two old buildings.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know if anybody else did that, but we did. Yeah, little stuff. And it was like it's just that poking around and exploring, and that's literally like stuff I've been doing since I was in like junior high and high school. In theater, I'd always get the small part in the play, so whenever my lines weren't up, I was going up into the old theater, and you could get into a crawl space. There was a little hole about a foot, 2 feet maybe, I don't know, and it was like where there used to be a lighting fixture or something hanging there, but it wasn't there anymore, so you could shimmy up in there if you stacked enough chairs and walk across in the attic on a little plank across the whole top of this massive theater.
Gosh.
And get back to above the stage area. Same theater, backstage messing around. Wasn't my time to be doing my one little scene yet. And I open up a little door that's behind a bunch of slats and different things that are used to build sets. And I open the door, and I'm looking down. It's like the top of a door, and I'm looking down into what looks like a closet. And there's like things stored in there. And then down, I have to reach down. There's another door down there. So I reach down, and I like knock on that door because I see light coming at it. Well, there was a teacher in a classroom that backed up to that theater and didn't know that that was up there. I didn't know she was down there. So she opens the door and looks up and almost had a heart attack because there's a kid hanging out of the top of her closet. That's been going on since I was a young kid doing this kind of
like-
stuff.
Yeah, it's the curiosity. That's what it is.
Yeah, and
Bob's
we're all curious
curiosity.
about that kind. Well, maybe we're not all, but I was, and that's where it came from.
Well, and a lot of people are scared to explore their curiosity. We get taught at a certain age that you stop doing that.
Yeah.
You just do what you're supposed to do, and I think that's your vision for, okay, what else is out there? There's got to be a story. There's got to be something. Let's go for it.
Well, and from like the times that we've seen snakes and things like that when we go out, and it's always been the idea is like if we can get some of that on video and show the things that we're encountering as we go, but it's always that thought, like when we were at the world's largest man-made pool in Cisco, which had been abandoned for many, many years and survived a massive flood in 2016, and to get over to shoot the video at the kiddie pool part, I'm in weeds that are taller than I am, and there's a walkway that's less than a foot wide to go through there, and I can't see what's down by my feet. I'm close to the water. There could be a cottonmouth down there. I don't know, but it's like trudge forward and hope nothing bites.
And keep shooting. That was
Yeah.
what Bob from very first day one. Is no matter what happens, keep shooting.
Yeah,
I'll
whatever
be
happens,
okay.
yeah.
We'll deal with it later. Just don't stop shooting.
Yeah.
Whatever happens.
That's the rule. You get the shot, and then after we get the shot, then you can check on me.
He's like the Steve Irwin of Texas.
Old Texas.
There were a couple of times that I'm like, I sure hope they know how to get hold of my wife. But this has been a lot of fun. I think we could probably do this for a really long time.
Absolutely.
But the opportunity to have you two guys, we spent so much time on the road together, get back together and talk about this has been really fun.
Yeah, we hadn't seen each other since.
No, I don't think so. We haven't.
We've kind of chatted here and there around different things. I want to talk about, before we go though, I want to talk about what we're doing now. What I do now is pretty obvious. But Nick, you started into a business a few years back that you've now flourished in, and you now have your own thing going. And I want you to tell us all about Local and what that is.
Yeah. So I've got a business partner. He and I opened earlier this year Local Car Wash. Basically, it's a brand that is focused on creating the best human experience in our industry. A lot of people are moving towards automation and trying to do everything they can to take the people out of it. Well, we're like, hey, we love the automation for the equipment stuff. Let's bring more people into it and let them have a happy, smiling, friendly face to talk to when they come in. We chose the name Local because it's what we're focused on, the communities around us. We want to make sure that we're giving back to the areas that we, where we live and play. And so that's what we started this year, and this is our first one. Our goal is to expand and grow after this, but it's a model that most people aren't thinking about because you don't think of a car wash and associate that with happy, smiling faces of people who want to make your day better.
It's kind of like the Chick-fil-A of car washes.
We've been told that before. And we appreciate that compliment.
Yeah, it's a compliment. Awesome. Yeah, and so it's really cool. But if you're in East Texas, especially Tyler, which is where the kind of the flagship location is, where is it in Tyler?
So we're on South Broadway, right next to Kohl's and Freddy's. If you can find those two places, you'll see us.
Okay, cool. And you guys have plans to put some other locations elsewhere, which I guess are not ready to be revealed just yet. But you guys are actively looking to spread this out and do business everywhere, huh?
Definitely. Our goal, we want to serve as many communities as possible.
Cool.
And so we'll start with Tyler, and we'll see where it takes us.
Is there somewhere they can find you guys on social media or anything like that?
The best place is probably our website, and then you can branch out from there, and that's localcarwash.us.
Okay, cool. Sean, are you still working for those who shall not be named?
I am. But I don't even think I've told you. Me and my wife have a business now. We're doing pet care.
Really?
Yes, we board people's dogs in our house.
Oh, cool.
One family at a time, because a lot of people just get tired of these, places with 100 cages and their dog gets thrown in there and it gets let out for, 5 minutes a day to go to the bathroom and then thrown back in. And so we started boarding dogs in our house.
That's amazing. How cool.
Walks dogs and does check-in visits, and it is the absolute best site.
Yeah, is this, you got a public facing thing where people can get a hold of you guys?
Yes, it is boardwalkpetcare.com.
Very cool.
We're
What
DFW.
area?
Yeah,
DFW?
we're up in DFW. Yep.
Cool.
But we're up right by the airport, so if you're going somewhere on vacation, bring your dog by and then go to the airport. Works perfect.
We have some travel plans ourselves coming up later on this year. You might be hearing from us.
Well, that'll work.
Cats too?
Yeah, anything. Any animal. I think we've done lizards and cats and all kinds of stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Lizards? What about spiders?
I would make an exception for Spooky.
Spooky the spider, who is our on-set critter who's been here since 2013 when Sean and I first started with Festival of Fears. Same spider, which is how I know that he is a she, because the males only live 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Apparently.
That's how you figured it out.
And females are the only ones known to live 10 plus. And Spooky was pretty large when I got her. So she's 10 years on top of whatever she had to get that big.
Wow.
So I have no idea how old that spider is. I just keep the crickets coming, and she doesn't bite me.
Obviously, she's happy.
Yeah, she's doing pretty good in there in her little, in her creepy little cage I have for her in there. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So we might have to board the spider and maybe the big silver lab at some point. Can you take big goofy dogs too?
One of our regulars is about 130-pound doggo Argentina, which basically looks like a pit bull and a Great Dane had a child. with the personality of a lab when they're puppies. They're
wow,
very
that's
playful,
cool.
and he does not know how big he is.
Yeah, that's the thing with my lab. She has no idea. She thinks she's a lab dog, and she gets there as soon and as fast as she can. Well, I love to hear that you guys both have kind of your own endeavors going. You got great things going on right now, and just know that the invitation is open. Anytime we're heading out on the road again and you guys can swing loose, let's do it.
That sounds good.
Great.
Yep. Let's do it. All right, folks. Expedition Texas, the podcast, is presented by Crazy Water. Don't forget the Crazy Water Festival coming to Mineral Wells, Texas, starting October 10th. Details, of course, are online. You can get all those. Go to Visit Mineral Wells, and, of course, Downtown Mineral Wells has a Facebook page you can follow as well. Visit Crazy Water, and be sure to pick some up next time you're in the store. Crazy Water, of course, from Mineral Wells, Texas, our sponsor here on Expedition Texas. Also presented by the East Texas Oil Museum. Thanks to both of those great sponsors for bringing us here each and every week. If you want to see videos of the podcast, let's say you're listening right now on Apple Podcasts or Google Play or whatever your favorite podcast app is, you can go watch this entire conversation, see some of the things that we mentioned that are positioned around the set here. If you go watch the YouTube video, that's at our YouTube channel, where you can also see past episodes of Expedition Texas. And as a sort of a little gift to everybody here today, I've decided that sometime within the next week or two, we are going to go back and make season 7, that epic season that we shot on that big long road trip, including Duel and the Herring Hotel and all those. We're going to make season 7 in its entirety, with no commercials available on the YouTube channel. So that's a personal endeavor there that I'm going to work on for you guys and for everybody listening and watching the podcast. So thank you guys for everything that you did to help make this show do what it does.
Thanks for doing
Thank
this.
you. Shot to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate y'all being here. And for Nyc Moy and Sean Bloch, I'm Bob Alden. We'll see you next time right here on Expedition Texas, the podcast. We're going to find it.